I kind of wear my recovery like a badge of honor. I think I'm better for it in a way. And I think that if me sharing my story helps someone feel less alone, like, I'm willing to do that. And every time I do it, it makes the shame that could have come from this eating disorder be less and less.
Alycia, what are some leading emotional barriers holding people back from treatment?
I think a feeling I see a lot is hopelessness. I think a lot of people have given up on this idea that they can have a different life, and especially those who have tried treatment before. They feel like if they've relapsed, their life is over, it's not worth trying, and they have given up. And I think a lot of people don't reach out because they have given in to the thoughts that the eating disorder puts in their head that it's not worth it, they can't do it, and they've lost faith.
You mentioned people who've been to treatment before, so are there some real world examples of those people who have called and said, I've been to treatment 50 times. Why is this going to be different?
Yeah, I think relapse is common. And I think it's part of a lot of people's recovery journey. It was part of mine. And I think I encourage people to focus on not that they relapse, but what are they going to do with the relapse? And what action can they take since the relapse? Because I think a relapse can really cause a lot of shame and guilt and feeling like a failure, and that doesn't define someone's chances of having a different life. It's what they do with that relapse. And for people who have been to treatment before, I say, great, thanks for calling, good for you, you've done this before. Take what you know has worked for you, leave behind what you know hasn't worked for you. You are in a position of being able to do this again, and you can do it differently and learn from what you've done in the past. They have an upper hand, really.
Are you willing to share about your own recovery story and how it might relate to how you engage with people who are calling and need our help?
Sure. Looking back, my body image issues started when I was probably 9. I remember thinking I was fat when I was 9. I was a dancer, a competitive dancer, and just body comparison and things like that started pretty young for me. And I think I was always kind of ashamed of my body from an early age. And then the actual eating disorder behaviors, someone in high school showed me that they were purging. And the moment I started that, I didn't stop. It was like when people talk about their first time using heroin, that it was like their thing. That's what binging and purging became for me. And that carried on through most of high school. Most people didn't know about it. And then I went to college and I really tried to be behavior free. I was behavior free, but I was mentally unwell. A lot of negative body image issues, a lot of kind of just like restricting and just like disordered eating in a lot of ways. But I would say that I would have considered that then like recovery because it was behavior free. But I know that mentally I was still very not in recovery. And then I had a full-blown relapse right before I graduated college. And that lasted a handful of years and was terrible. And then I just reached a point of being like, I can't live life this way anymore. I am so sick of this. But I was so secretive about it that I didn't have a lot of people telling me that I needed to do life differently or that I could. And so I just imagined what I wanted for my future and I wanted a life with family. I wanted a life with kids. And I knew that if I didn't have recovery, that I would be passing this to my children. And what an unfair way to set kids up to view their life and their body in the world. And so I reached out for help, and that's really when my real recovery journey started. And then I think I really didn't share that for many years. And the reason why I share it now is I kind of wear my recovery like a badge of honor. I think I'm better for it in a way. And I think that if me sharing my story helps someone feel less alone, like, I'm willing to do that. And every time I do it, it makes the shame that could have come from this eating disorder be less and less. Mm-hmm. And I think that people can feel so alone with an eating disorder. I know I did. And what I say to people is, I'm not saying I am you, but I do understand parts of you. Mm-hmm. Like they understand parts of me. Mm-hmm. And I think that's really important, to feel seen and understood during a really dark time. Mm-hmm. So it kind of makes it all worth it.
What are people not talking about?
I think people aren't talking about how eating disorders affect entire families. Mm-hmm. The easiest comparison is addiction, and how people say addiction is a family disease. Same with eating disorders. Mm-hmm. I think the whole family dynamic shifts when an eating disorder is present in the home. And it's not just the individual with the eating disorder who suffers, and it's not just the individual with the eating disorder who needs help. Mm-hmm. Everyone in the house needs support in some way. I think it's typical for the person with the eating disorder to be the only focus, be the person with the only problems, when usually there's a lot more under it. I think people also don't talk about how eating disorders are typically rooted from trauma. Mm-hmm. I think people look at what comes from an eating disorder and how that affects people physically. I think that's the easiest piece. Yeah. But what's underneath that is usually 9 out of 10 times trauma.
Mm-hmm. What are some realizations that have helped people overcome fear as it relates to coming to treatment?
I think helping people sort between how they feel and having willingness can be really helpful. So it's saying you can feel sad, you can feel angry, you can be pissed off about having to pause on your life, but still be willing to show up and try. I think that can really help shift people into a space of action, because recovery requires action. Because we can talk all day about what we're going to do, but until you do it, nothing changes. Allowing people to have the space to have feelings, but also encourage them to stay willing is really helpful.
What truths do you tell people when barriers are keeping them from getting treatment?
I tell them that treatment is going to be hard. I think people deserve to have someone speak to them with honesty and transparency. And so I will always give the truth, is what I tell people. And I say it's going to be really hard. But that doesn't mean that they shouldn't do it. It doesn't mean that they can't do it. I remind and empower, I try to empower people that they already do so many hard things every day with the eating disorder, that they can do the hard thing that is treatment and recovery, and it does get easier. I can promise that it gets easier.
What about parents? What truths do you share with parents when they're considering care for their child?
I think most parents are not getting thank yous from their kids, at least not in the beginning. And so the truth is, it's gut-wrenching for parents to have to decide. Even if their child is on board, it's still heartbreaking for a parent to make that decision. And just because it's hard or emotional doesn't mean that it's the wrong thing or that they shouldn't do it. It's the biggest gift that they could give anyone. And I predict that their child will eventually say thank you.
What are common misconceptions about eating disorder treatment?
I think the eating disorder likes to convince people that treatment is going to be like prison. I think when I hear people use really harsh language, that's when I know the eating disorder is present in the conversation. The eating disorder does a really great job of putting these individuals in victim positions. And so I really try to move them into a place of empowerment and a place of truth and reality. So our programs are not prison, not even close to prison. They're very comfortable and beautiful and caring, and all their needs and beyond will be met. I think people think that recovery is going to be hard for their whole life, and why even try? And I don't want this to be my whole life, and it doesn't have to be. Recovery gets easier in time if you work your program genuinely and you work it fully.
Thank you, Alycia, for being here and sharing your expertise with people who might be considering treatment. Is there anything else that you'd like people to hear or know?
It's just a pleasure being here, and it's a pleasure even working with people like you, and working for a company like Odyssey, where we're full of leadership with people who genuinely care and will go above and beyond to make change and help people. So I'm just thankful.